Well, hi, everybody. Looks like there is a good group in here already. I see a lot of folks that I recognize your name, putting on my headphones now, so hopefully I can hear what I'm doing. I hope you guys enjoyed that game. I thought it was a pretty good one. We're going to talk about the ins and outs and what's going on. A couple of takeaways. I want to start generally. Big day for Sammy Watkins, obviously, and he was kind of due. This was a contest where if you're going to take away Hill and you're going to take away Kelce, and that's clearly what they were trying to do, although Kelce kind of helped him out early and then came on as the game went on. The Broncos are a team that understands what they have to try to do. I thought they gave a little bit of pressure, a little bit of disguise to Pat Mahomes, kept him a little bit off guard. Hope you guys can see. If you can't see very well, let me know. Let me tell you about this light. If you're having any kind of trouble, please say it in the comments. So I'm going to adjust the camera just a little bit. Hopefully that'll help. So Barry was at practice this week. I like that. And as we go on, folks, if you want to ask a question, make sure you hit the question mark first. Very good, DeAndre. So first off the bat, first question, it's going to be about defense. Let me finish talking about the offense, and I'll get to that, DeAndre. We'll talk about him right away. The offense, this is what happens when they're in a position and somebody's going to try to slow them down, which can be done, and we've seen that. They have to be able to shift gears. And I thought that was really the big takeaway for the day, is that Patrick Mahomes was able to shift gears, able to start targeting Sammy, not because they were trying to get him into the game plan, because he was the guy they needed to feed in order to attack the defense in the correct way. So I think that's important, and it wasn't flashy, although I love the way Sammy Watkins runs. As he gets in there and he gets the ball in his hands, a lot of times he can beat a defender with his body, shielding off. I particularly like him in the slant game. I think that's incredible. And once he gets the ball in his hand, that's where it really turns the tide for me. Kind of like what Bo was able to do back in the day, right? He's a receiver that once he has control of the ball, you have to really fight to get him to come down to the ground. And that's an advantage that obviously Tyreek doesn't have. Tyreek has his skill set in stretching the field. Kelce's tough to bring down. And he and Kareem Hunt will hurdle you any chance that they get. I thought that was fun to see as well. But I think really this is the missing dimension. And maybe Sammy's still coming on and trying to get into the defense. Maybe he's there and he feels better about it. It looked to me, and that's really the big takeaways. Looking at him on the field, it looked like he was more comfortable. I didn't see the confusion. I didn't see him looking around the other receivers for advice or where he was supposed to be. And so Sammy, I think, is at least today fulfilling the role, filling his role that he was supposed to do when he was signed. And if he can do that week in and week out, that makes him worth that contract, I think. And a lot of folks are concerned about the size of that contract, and I can understand that. But he's a guy that he's not going to be the primary feed. He has to take his chances and make the most of them when he gets them. And I thought that's what you saw today against an opponent that knows you a little bit better than anybody else does, because this is their second time in one season playing them. And I thought that really kind of slowed the pace down a little bit in terms of the scoring. I should have just left my prediction where it was, and I would have been nearly dead on. But I adjusted it up a little bit just because I thought they'd have a little bit more play. But, hey, that's what happens. And if you missed that, it was on Chiefs Digest. All of our predictions are up there on Chiefs Digest on Sunday morning, so check those out. And the pod tonight, you'll hear what Matt had to say. Matt Derrick joined us, and what we already recorded, I just finished a couple minutes ago. So check that out, too. A lot of insight from how the team is feeling about Sammy Watkins and in general, and how Patrick Mahomes has this personality that kind of takes on during the game time. But then he's back to being a guy that studies a lot and is still trying to learn the offense. He's not a robust leader all week long. That's really his game day personality. That's something that's very important, being able to switch that on and off and not get too full of yourself because you've had success, that you start losing focus on what you have to do in the week in order to prepare to have more success. So I thought that was a really big takeaway that's very, very important. On the defensive side, I'm frustrated still. I thought they were on a better path. I felt like they were getting better against the run. And you guys saw in the game plan video that Lindsay's a tough guy to keep track of, but also to bring down. He's wiry and he's quick, and he's a challenge. But I still feel like, man, what was it? 189 yards total on the ground between Booker and Lindsay and a couple of straight plays elsewhere. That's a lot of yardage to give up against the run for a team that looked better last week again. And I'm not sure why they took a step forward. Now they took like a half step back. I won't say it was terrible, but I think it's going to be interesting going forward. They got to get a handle on that. I thought the corners played decently. And yes, we're going to talk about some of the blown coverages. I see a couple of folks asking the right questions. So I guess at this point, let's talk defense. And the first question from DeAndre was Dorian O'Daniel. And I thought you saw Dorian do what Dorian needs to do. I thought he played coverage well. I thought he came up well. There was one play I thought maybe he hesitated a little bit. Maybe he's a little bit confused on his assignment. But it didn't slow him down to the point that it cost the play. And I thought you see him be where he needed to be and be a solid contributor to this defense. Was it as flashy as his first game? I don't think so, but that's okay. It was what he needed to do. And he contributed in a way that helped the defense do what it needs to do in keeping people out of the end zone. This team gives up a ton of yards. We all know that. And that's what's going to happen. They're built that way. To a certain extent, their philosophy is that way as well. Bob is not as concerned about down in, down out, whether you're giving up yardage or not. He's trying to stop the big play. He's trying to keep them limited, get them into the red zone where they can use the back and not have to cover 60 yards behind them. He sees that as an advantage, having that end line behind him, and that's the way they play. And I can understand that. People have had that philosophy before. I don't particularly subscribe to it, but Bob does, and that's why we see what we see. The safeties. Just one more second. I'm sorry. On Dorian O'Daniel. Dorian, I think, is going to be given more opportunity. We don't know what the extent of the injury is to Hitchens, so we're going to see an opportunity to see him more. And I think that's good and bad. We'll talk about why here in a minute. A couple of questions. Do you think they're going to re-sign Derek Johnson? No. I don't think you're going to see Derek Johnson play again, certainly not in Kansas City. He may be holding out to try to play for somebody else again, but I really don't think that they're willing to go there, is the gist of it. I think Derek's going to be a great coach. I really look forward to that, but I don't think you're going to see this particular front office bring him back in order to try to shore up this linebacker group. If the extent of Hitchens' injury is a lot deeper than we thought, then maybe. Because you did see Neiman come on, play decently against the run, and Neiman can play the run, I think, better. He can cover too, but I think he's best as a first, maybe second down linebacker in this particular defense, and then giving way to O'Daniel to play second and long and third downs exclusively. I think that is a formula that can help moving forward. So really split duty in order to try to take that. And that's not out there. You know, that's exactly the direction they were going with O'Daniel filling in for Ragland. So Ragland and Neiman got to get on the same page to attack the run, because I think teams are realizing it may be old school, it may be old fashioned, but you can run on the Chiefs and you can have success. And that's really what it comes down to. A couple more questions. Does KC make a play for Carl Joseph? I don't think so. Carl Joseph is overrated in terms of his play across the board as a Raider. I don't think he's particularly great at coverage. I think he's instinctual. I think he can play shallow zone. I think he's best as a robber. Again, another guy whose best attribute, I feel, is a replication of what Eric Berry does best. And yes, he's not back. But if Eric Berry comes back, you don't want to give up another like top tier draft pick for a Carl Joseph. I don't think Brett Veach will, but I could be wrong. So, I mean, it really comes down to his evaluation. And Brett Veach, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but Brett Veach relies on his pre-draft evaluations of a lot of these players when he's thinking about acquiring them later. He puts a lot of faith in his scouting staff and his eye in particular, and I don't see any reason to blame him for that. That's a good thing. It can cloud you, though. It gives you an impression of somebody from possibly 3 seasons ago that had potential that you saw but didn't get there, even with coaching. And it depends on the level of coaching for sure. You saw that with Cam Irving in Cleveland. It's just not what it was. More trade talk. Let's see here. Did the Broncos expose the offense? Sean, I don't think they exposed it. I think really the O-line was a little bit frustrated. I thought they allowed a lot more pressure, and they got a lot of different looks, particularly in those A gaps, and particularly on the right side between Wiley and Reeder. We'll see what happens. We'll see how Mitch Morse is, but I don't think they're any more overexposed than they were before. I think Pat didn't scramble quite as well today as he did the last time they played the Broncos. And like I said in the game plan video, I think the Broncos defense, their pass rush is elite. And I think that showed off today, maybe a little bit more than we expected to without Shane Ray and so on and so forth. Janoris Jenkins. I don't think Janoris Jenkins helps this team. You could make a claim that maybe Skandrick, maybe even Nelson might be pushed by that, but I don't think Jenkins really is going to step in and play Bob's style of defense and give you much more of a better performance, because I think a lot of the limitation on what this defense is able to do is because of Bob and the way he has guys playing. I think a lot of performance comes down to understanding the play call and doing what you're asked to do. And I think Bob asks a lot of people. I think honestly, overall, I think some of it is overly complex. And I think that's part of what you saw with the two blown plays. And in particular, the first one, I believe, was the one that stood out to me the most, where Fuller went to pass a guy off and let him run deep, expecting the safety to be over the top, Ron Parker. Parker was shallow coming up to make the play. Didn't look like he had any expectation that he was supposed to be back. And that's either a miss in the play call and understanding that your assignment is where it is, or it's some kind of mixed read that relies on the player to judge the routes that he's seeing and adjust his responsibility accordingly. And maybe that's just too much at this point for Ron. Ought to know his responsibilities. Maybe there's new wrinkles. I don't know. But Fuller still, he's a good athlete. He's a good corner, but he's still adjusting the way he's asked to play in this defense. I think that shows a lot of those little things, and that's why you see some of those mistakes. Can that change? Yes. I think experience can change it, but I also think that there's an effort that needs to be made on the coaching staffs to try and simplify things, to make things easier, let guys be the athletes they are. This team has been very good about selecting particularly defenders that are athletic. Let them play a little bit more, I think. Let's see. Jeremy asks, why isn't K-Pass getting more snaps? It's a good question. And I don't think that it's anything about K-Pass. I think that they have a heavy investment in Breeland Speaks. He's had to play earlier than Tano has because of the way the injuries worked out. And I think they're trying to ride with that. And I think because Tano's a year ahead, it's more in the Chiefs staff's mind. I think it's more imperative that they get snaps for Breeland because he needs that year to get up to speed. And I think you saw it some today, not just the sack, although I thought that was a good move. That duck under worked well. I mean, you got to take everything that happened today with a grain of salt in terms of anybody who went against Bowles, because Bowles is struggling in a big way. And I don't know that he's somebody that's going to be here on a second contract in this league. Certainly not in Denver, I doubt, unless he really turns things around. So take that with the salt that it needs. But I think you'll see K-Pass sprinkle in more. It's also that, he had that ankle injury. They didn't need him last week. They didn't use him a ton this week. I saw a few plays, but I'll have to see what his snap counts actually are when I get the counts. But I think he'll continue to get a little bit more. They want to keep that rotation that's specifically in their plan. So I think that's going to be good for them. Next question. What do you think about Murray? I thought Murray showed back up for having an ankle and being out for a little bit. I thought he played fine. I don't think he did anything great. I didn't see any glaring holes. When I watch the All-22, I'll have a better idea, and I'll try to put that in the film room. If you guys want that, just let me know in the comments. I have a soft spot for the guy because, I think he can be really good. I really liked what he did as a nickel corner in college, and I'm just waiting for him to kind of fully make that transition. And some guys never get there. So I'm trying to stay optimistic for the guy, and that's about all I can say about that. Along those lines, Chris has been pushing on the show that Landon Collins would be a great fit. And, Landon Collins plays a good brand of football. I like that. He's too important. It's not about whether he will fit with the Chiefs or not. They'd find a way to use him. The big limiting factor is that the Giants need him. They don't, especially after getting rid of Eli Apple, who I think was probably a personality mismatch rather than a physical or an on-field mismatch. I feel like, man, you can't let Landon Collins go if you're the New York Giants because you have to rely on him back there. I don't think there's enough room that really anything, unless it's just stupid, crazy 3 number ones or something like that, it would ever get it done for Landon Collins. So that's where I'm at on that. Adam, how are you? Appreciate the comment. Talked about Dorian. Green Bay's doing their job right now. Hey, I'll take it. At least when I got on here, I don't have it up because I can't watch 2 things at once. So I'm trying to keep focused. Ron Parker does blow coverages, but you're absolutely right. He's the most experienced and the best we have at the moment. Do you think the game plan was to let get Watkins more involved? I think it has been, especially in the last couple of games, on the list of things to do. I think maybe it just presented itself a little bit better today. If the Broncos are going to put a linebacker on Sammy Watkins, take it all day long and run to the bank. So Mahomes MVP. That's a tough one. Because when you picture Mahomes without Tyreek Hill, the picture changes quite a bit. And I think what we've seen in recent weeks is that Kareem Hunt has a major impact as well. When he's running well, it takes the pressure off. It does a lot of good for him. So I'm not ready to go MVP yet. If he can continue this, good Lord, yeah. I mean, by the end of the season, if it's still like this, yes. I think you have to at least have the conversation with him included. Should the Chiefs trade before the deadline? We talked about a couple of specifics, but I don't know if Pat Peterson's going to go anywhere. A lot of times comments like the ones we saw made this last week are because they're trying to up the price. They're trying to say publicly what they want rather than what they're getting. And that has an effect. And it could signal to other teams, hey, up your offers. And if the Chiefs were offering a first and a fifth, maybe they jump up to a first and a third, and maybe that gets it done. Maybe that changes the Bidwell point of view, or maybe that changes Patrick's point of view. He would make a difference on this defense. I don't think it's the glaring hole that needs to be filled, but he would make a difference. I will agree with that. What about a play for Peterson? Yeah, okay, same question. Sorry about that. Do you think they try for Jenkins? No, I don't. I talked about that a little bit earlier. If you're just getting here, when it uploads, when we're done, go back and I talked about Jenkins some a little bit earlier. A couple of things that are important. Neiman is still young. I think he's going to get an opportunity. From everything that I've heard so far, talking to guys that were in the locker room, I've heard a couple of things about Hitchens not looking very good and not looking like he's going to be in any kind of position to be back in the next week or two. So I think what you're going to see is Neiman. I think it's going to be a crash course for him. And I think now that they've got O'Daniel running with the nickel set, running in coverage, now it's up to use Neiman in a productive way against the run, specifically on first downs. Then you're going to see some teams start shifting to throwing on first downs, which I think generally helps this defense overall. But it's going to be a little bit of give and play, and it all depends on how well he performs and how much he soaks up of the game plans as well. Clinton Dix. That's another trade rumor. That's an interesting one. That one, I think, maybe they want to move him more than any of the other rumors, and that it takes 2 to tango, and maybe that helps. Clinton Dix has been up and down, though. I don't know where you play him. Do you play him and Ron? I don't know. It doesn't give you much of a strong safety presence. Do you bench Ron for him and try to put Lucas in the back? Possibly, but Lucas is still young. He's not back yet. He's going to be gone for a while. He's not playing an elite level, so you never know. Shout out to Andy Humberg, by the way. Appreciate you being here, buddy. Why didn't they use Kareem Hunt more? Andy gets in a rut. And I tracked play call percentage a lot last season. And when he does that, there are times where he'll kind of almost forget about the run. It even happened with Matt Nagy calling the play some last year. And you saw that dip. And it wasn't just last season that Kareem was hurting and it was his first rookie wall kind of thing. It was also that they wanted to throw more. Andy would rather throw than run on any given play. But he is also a sincere professional that understands you have to have a balance in order to play the game well. And you have to have some way to move the ball without throwing it. And whether that's a quarterback scramble or whether that's handing the ball off. The thing that I'm most disappointed in, there was one pitch play in particular I thought was great, and I thought they should have come back to it. And I talked about it in the game plan. Like, I was really looking for that, and it didn't come to fruition. The other thing that I would like is, and I know you've heard me say it before, but get Sherman in the game more. Even if you don't run out of a double tight end sets or even tight end sets, give me a fullback to lead the way a little bit more and bash somebody. That's what I want to see them do with Kareem Hunt. I think the biggest advantage they have is that on sides. And man, I think one guy, and he might have gone to the house. So I was happy to see it. He is a better athlete, and he's lining up as a tight end we've seen. And I think he's still underutilized, in my opinion. I'd like to see him run out of some split backs too. I'd like to see them use him as a diversion as well. Does Mahomes remind me of Aaron Rodgers? Angel, I like that question. And there are certain plays where he definitely does. I think still, overall, when you look at the game and any of his games, particularly the last few, where those interceptions that come because he just didn't see what was going on, that's kind of still the problematic thing. And we talked about that before the season started. He's done it a lot less than I thought he was going to, but that's exactly the kind of play that he made in college, and this is what we can expect. And eventually he's going to iron that out. Until then, I'll hold off on the hardcore comparisons to any of the MVPs. But excuse me. Who do you think has been producing the most out of this draft class for us from J-Dub? It's a very good question. In terms of the quality of snaps, I don't think he's had the most snaps by far. But I think the guy who has done the most with his opportunities when he is on the field is Derek Nottie, and I'm very, very happy to see him do that. He didn't stand out a whole lot today. In fact, I was generally disappointed with the run defense across the board today, and maybe that's problematic. Maybe that scheme. Reggie still looked like he wasn't attacking the hole enough. When you see a 5'8" running back run between the tackles like Lindsay did today, somebody's missing keys. Somebody's guessing at things. Somebody's in the wrong position. Once I look at the 22, I'll have a better idea of that. The Packers did lose. Thanks, Benjamin. I was not aware at the time, so thank you. Man, I wanted the Rams to not be undefeated anymore, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Let's see. Any idea on Barry? It's a great question. A lot of people want to know about Barry. I think really at this point, if they were going to do something preemptive to try and clean up the back of the heel for any additional small bone spurs or calcifications, I think they would have done that. Not that they haven't. They may just not have announced it. But at this point, I think you've probably been able to do everything that you want to do in terms of trying to prevent another rupture. And that's really what it is you don't want to see Eric Berry rupture again. That's the big deal. In the meantime, if you could do everything you can to rehab it, to loosen it, to keep it stretched, an Achilles, when it starts to get fragile, it's going to get tightened. It's going to try to reinforce itself. You're going to have muscle tightness, and that's you're going to have pain some, and that's some of the things that Eric reported. When that subsides, or they get to the playoffs, if it hasn't, you're going to see Eric Berry, I think. I don't think this is going to be a season where you don't see him at all. So for what that's worth, that's my thought on it. Single biggest weakness on defense. The run can hurt you, but generally it's going to be in the pass game that's going to get you beat. And you see that they're not giving up points as much as they're giving up yards. And so it's hard to notice that because there's a lot of yards on the ground. I think the poorest play is at inside linebacker. I won't say it's the biggest weakness, though, because the safeties still have to do a better job protecting the corners, and especially when you're going to play teams with elite passing games like the Patriots that I fully expect the Chiefs to see again. So that's still kind of where I'm at. Thanks, Tristan. I appreciate you watching. Glad you like the channel. Barry will stay. I don't think they're even going to restructure him unless they have a reason to, so I wouldn't worry about that. Michael Adams, what do you think about switching to a 4-3 defense? They're kind of already halfway there. So the amount of nickel that they play in the 4-man front is a 4-3 front. Sorry, folks. that sets you up to play it more often. And I think that's something that can work for them. But, you know, there's times when you want to fill those gaps, you want to get larger bodies on the inside. Just running 2 D tackles isn't really the most efficient way to do that. I still prefer the 3-4. I think it's the best for this league in terms of being able to load up the front when you want to stop the run and still being able to have more athletes on the field. And I think that's the bottom line. Do you see us, J-Dub, another great question. Do you see us making the AFC Championship game? Right now, I do. So long as there's no funny business and they don't play the Patriots until the championship game. So that's my full expectation at this moment, unless there's a major reason or injury or something that sidetracks that. Rex Ryan for the defensive coordinator. Yes, I think that's something they should consider. Rex is goofy on TV, and I've heard a lot of people say about how he doesn't predict well. He doesn't know what he's talking about on TV. That's TV. Rex knows X's and O's. He knows how to be an over-aggressive defense, and I think he's got the athletes. If he were to take over this defense, I think he could make a big difference because he has the kind of guys that he likes and he knows how to use. I think Fuller's been playing well. I think, honestly, Steve Nelson has been underrated. I'll have to look at his stats again, but man, he is not giving up a whole lot of catches in what he does. He's given up only, I think, 2 touchdowns of the year. So I think Steve Nelson is playing an underrated season. Dan Sorensen back this week. Yes. I think he will be back. They were very, very optimistic about him last week, and he wasn't able to be activated. So we'll find out. I think he practices, and he has a couple of weeks to practice before they have to make an actual final decision on him. So, yeah, I think he will be back as far as practice goes. Maybe it might be another week or 2 till he's activated, but yeah, I think he's back soon. For the remaining schedule, what's a realistic record? I think this team can legitimately end up with 12 wins. Somebody's going to figure something out. I just don't think it's going to be for a while. Can they go 14-2? Yeah. They could go 15-1. There's nothing that says they can't beat those Rams. They're tough, but there's nothing that says they can't. It's going to take a concerted effort on offense to put that many points up, but don't count them out. Yes, the Broncos D did play hard. Binder Believer, how are you, buddy? Any trade rumors? I talked about them a little bit earlier. Go back and check out the beginning of the show. Speaks did get home today. I'm glad you noticed that, Jared. I think that's a good sign, something that we can count on going forward. And grades on PFF are good. They're a good starting point, but you got to watch the tape too. Sometimes there's a little bit of laxness in there. And I look at what they do and how many times they're targeted. If you're not targeted that much, your grades look a little bit better. So that said, I think that's a good place to kind of wrap it up for today. I appreciate you guys being on. We had another couple of 100 people on here. It was great. I'm going to get into the film for the Wednesday show. Clint Casey, I appreciate that. Prediction for Browns game. I'm not there. I got to look at the film yet. I'll have it on the podcast probably Thursday. So check that out. I'll have film for you on Wednesday night. Might be a little bit delayed, but it should be, that 6:30. I'm trying to release them also. They're steady. So look for that. And then I'll have game plan next week as well. So I appreciate all of you joining and chatting. Great to see you all. Thanks for the time. And I will check in with you next time.